And North Korea fires off ballistic missiles after warning of an accidental confrontation as the US and South Korea begin their annual joint drills. Well, let's stay on that topic and get a little bit more analysis. For that, we're joined by Grant Newsham, Senior Research Fellow at Japan Forum for Strategic Studies. Mr. Newsham, thank you for joining us. Now, North Korea has launched these missiles in retaliation to that military exercise that it perceives as a precursor to war. Par for the course, you said, but it's only day one, isn't it, of this US-South Korea exercise? Could we see perhaps further reaction from North Korea?
Well, you might. That's always a possibility. Usually it is just one thing. And perhaps one of the interesting aspects of it is that it appears the missiles were fired to the west, into the Yellow Sea. Often these missiles are shot to the east, either towards Japan, over Japan, or even closer, sort of in the direction of U.S. territories. So that was something that was different. But the basic response to the U.S.-South Korean exercise, that was predictable. There's always something that the North Koreans do, and they are feeling sort of a little bit better about themselves recently and don't seem to be so intimidated.
A little emboldened, perhaps. Now, North Korea also added a warning of sparking a war with, quote, what they're calling an accidental single shot. Now, remind us what they're referring to with this pointed statement and the message they're sending.
Well, this is always what they say. It's really not that unusual. They say that this is going to spark war, that the Americans and the South Koreans are aiming for war, angling to attack North Korea. But the language really is predictable. And I wouldn't say it's tiresome, but it is certainly part of the woodwork whenever you do your training, that the North Koreans are going to talk and they're going to do something.
Do you not feel that it is a pointed statement, given that it comes on the heels of the South Korean jets bombing blunder of a civilian town last week?
I'm not so sure about that. Maybe it's just one gets so used to the language. Yeah. But the accidental sort of bombing of a South Korean village by the South Korean Air Force, that some would say it was part and parcel of this kind of training. It's fortunate more people weren't injured. Yeah. But it was up close to the DMZ, but the training often does take place.
So no live fire exercises.
So I'm not sure there's a connection.
No live fire exercises going forward in these drills. Is that going to impact the modified drills?
Oh, only in the sense they're not going to shoot ordnance. They've had these exercises before where they don't actually shoot anything. But this was a sort of predictable response to this accident, just to call it off, it seems. But they will do plenty of training with the sort of command post exercises, and they will be out in the field moving around, but there won't be any shooting, apparently.
The exercises will, however, be the first large-scale exercises since Mr. Trump began his second term. How will Trump's interactions with Russia these days, plus Kim Jong-un's perhaps familiarity with Trump, entice maybe a different response from Kim Jong-un, consider something different from aggression, diplomacy?
Well, that's hard to say, because certainly Mr. Trump has his hands full with what he's trying to do with Ukraine, with the Russians, and keep the Chinese sort of in play as well. I don't think he's gotten around to North Korea yet. It could be that the North Korean response is actually shaped more by what the Russians tell them to do, or even what the Chinese tell them to do or not to do. But I think for now, Washington hasn't really focused so much on North Korea, but North Korea is, of course, isn't necessarily waiting to see what the Americans do.
We do have a precedence when it comes to perhaps how the U.S. will take these drills forward. And I'm wondering, perhaps under his first term as president, Trump did scale the drills back to facilitate these talks with North Korea. He also wants South Korea to pay more presence for the U.S. troops there. Do these maybe drills have a future?
Well, I think they do. I think that the Americans and the South Koreans did agree, actually, to the host nation support, to the payment by South Korea. But there was, I think, a continued recognition of the importance of a proper defense by the Americans and the South Koreans to defend the peninsula. So I expect the drills will continue. When they were halted or reduced during the first Trump administration, that was when they were trying to see what they could get from North Korea, what kind of a deal was possible. I'm not so sure that they're going to be putting a brake on the training this time around. But you never know with Mr. Trump. He is unpredictable. And when he gets around to North Korea, maybe they will see what North Korea will do. But it really depends on North Korea's response, not what the Americans can offer to them.
Yeah, you talked about an emboldened North Korea. Kim Jong-un has made, no secret of a goal to radically grow his nuclear force to counter the West. And you've said that Kim Jong-un in North Korea is on a roll, thanks to Beijing and Moscow. So how much progress are they really making in reaching this goal?
Well, it's steady. It's not lightning fast, but if you look at the advances they've made in missile technology, basically going farther and hitting what they aim at, delivery systems, miniaturizing nuclear weapons, warheads, that it's been consistent. And now that they have actually gotten involved in the Ukraine war, there's actually a benefit to that, one might argue, because it does get them out of North Korea, gives them some real world experience. And that just by definition is helpful to a military as it tries to improve. But the North Korean economy is still, of course, chaos. It can't feed its own people. And it does depend on sustenance from the Russians and from the Chinese as well. So that hasn't changed at all. But militarily, the North Koreans have been making steady progress. Compared to 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it's noticeable.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Newsham, for speaking with us today. Grant Newsham, Senior Research Fellow at Japan Forum for Strategic Studies.